Ladies and gents, welcome back. We had some interesting developments at the inquiry. I try not to laugh at this one. We had one of the lawyers, he fainted at the inquiry and had to be taken out on a stretcher. It left a lot of people hanging, a lot of people wondering what was going on there. And well, I wanted to bring in somebody who might give us a little insight of what happened there, because it's just, rumors how they work on social media and whatnot. So I brought in Tom Marazzo to talk today. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
You guys are a little shook up with the stuff. Were you there at the inquiry when this went down?
No, so it's one of the days that I actually wasn't there in the audience, but as it happened, my phone started lighting up from both Keith and Eva, who were there in the room as it happened. And unfortunately, he did fall, rather hard on the ground. But he was still conscious. You could hear him moaning, and if people have seen the video, which I'm sure they've seen the video on Twitter and other things by now.
I was going to get to that. We have that right here, so we'll just go look at this footage. This is Commission Lawyer Gabriel Poliquin. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. And he was doing his questions with Ontario Deputy Solicitor General Mario Di Tommaso, and we'll just play the clip.
He says that there are 300 commercial CMV, that's commercial vehicles.
Yes.
Yeah, so he went down pretty hard there, and immediately they closed the commission and took it offline. And the footage from, of course, War Campaign. Thanks for all the coverage, Row and Pan. But so he was let out of there, and he was okay. I heard they took him out on a stretcher.
There was a nurse in the room. Sorry, we talked about the yawning thing, and just for the viewers to know that I'm not yawning because I'm tired. I feel fully awake. It's just that I've been talking for the last couple hours, and when I talk too much, for some reason, I yawn. And so I'm going to just invite all of the viewers to yawn along with me.
You're giving me the yawns. You're giving me the yawns.
Yeah. So there was a nurse in the room. She was actually sitting beside Eva. And, the security in the room, they cleared the room. And immediately there was a nurse right there on standby, fortunately, for him. And they did immediate sort of first aid on him, got him stabilized. Called 911. The ambulance came and took him, and I believe he was fully conscious as he was taken out on a stretcher to the hospital. So he's probably still there under observation, or maybe by now he's home. So who knows?
Well, that's
but
good
with Ontario wait times, you can never know.
Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
But well, a lot of people worried about how he is and making sure that his condition's okay. Now there was some talk, and this is how the internet works, right? People get pretty spicy on the internet, saying some things, and a lot of people asking what his vaccine status was, and we all know where that's going. But one thing, so the backlash to that was a lot of people saying it's unfair. You shouldn't be asking what somebody's medical status is. And then, well, that leads us to the question, why isn't this why we're here?
Yeah. I mean, I understand both sides of that coin, right? Because you're right. We shouldn't be saying, hey, what's your vaccine status? But, short time ago, a waiter or a waitress in a restaurant was demanding to know what your vaccine status was, right? And really, let's get to the heart of the matter. It's not that we want to invade the privacy. That's not really the issue with this particular unfortunate lawyer. It's people are looking for validation that they made the right choice not to get the vaccine. So if it was discovered that, he got his fourth booster this week, and that was the result, it would further kind of validate people's concerns and fears about the vaccine. So I get why they're asking the question. But I think this is one of those moments where we just say, look, like, this is about being a compassionate human and acknowledging that maybe a little bit embarrassing for the man, but he just passed out on national television and all over the internet, and he's going to be seeing that for the rest of his life, unfortunately.
Well, I hope,
I for one, once, you know, I hit the fence playing baseball, and luckily that was never on film, but I'm sure if it was, somebody out in the internet world would be showing that every time, every day of for the rest of my life.
Right.
So let's be kind.
Yeah, let's be kind. Let's be kind. So the Minister of Transport Ontario was on, and he was asked a lot of questions, and leading questions into why didn't you just take away their license? And that was a big question there. And well, what he ended up getting to, and kind of alluding to, and what I took away from it, and these aren't his exact words, but that would be overreaching and overstepping his purview as what his powers are given to him as transportation minister. People were making these calls. Now, the point I'm really getting to, because I know we're both not lawyers, right? We're just everyday citizens. You were a volunteer at the Convoy, and you did what you could to help out with that. But the real question is. Well, I suppose it's this sentiment that people have throughout Canada, and that we've seen over the past few years, and that is people pushing and directly asking government officials to usurp powers that they do not have, and step over the boundaries of where the purviews of what government ought to be, and impose their will on other people in Canada. And again, isn't this why we're here?
It is. And, you know, as you were asking the question, you know, my brain was going off in about 6 different full-on tangents that there's not enough time in the day to explore all of them. But what I want to say is I'm glad that the MTO person acknowledged that under oath, you know, during his testimony, because it's an important step. And, you know, one of the tangents my mind immediately goes to is digital ID, but we can come back to that because I got a few more things I think I'd rather talk about first.
Okay.
But we look at this political class at every level of government, municipal, provincial, federal classes of government. And they've really taken the posture against the public that they are more of a parent role, and they know what's best for us, and they will dole out the punishment. Okay, if you don't do what somebody who was elected to be in that position tells you to do, they somehow feel now that they have this supreme authority over all of us, where they have some sort of God-given right or destiny to now be able to lord over us like kings and queens, right? And it is fundamentally flawed in a democratic society. That is why we have elections. That's why we have this system of government we have. But it seems like certain levels of government have become very high on this power. And so for 2.5 years during COVID, we're seeing that every level of government have always defaulted to very punitive measures against the public. And it's really upsetting because, you know, when the COVID tickets first came out for the masks, it was an $880 fine. That's more than for, you know, what it took them to get to bring out the driving texting while you're driving, right? And it's a greater fine if you were caught without a mask than if you were driving and texting. The last time I saw it, right? But the thing is, it's like, automatically what it does is it makes the police officer the judge, jury, and executioner right there on the street. And so you got every low level of person being high on this power that they've now been given. Now, right or wrong, they should never have been given that in my mind. But the MTO person was saying, like, we don't have the authority, and nor should we have the authority to skip due process. Right? You need to be charged. You need to have a day in court. And then you need to be, usually the sentencing comes at the very end of this process.
Right.
But you're right. We're seeing this whole usurp of the due process, and we're going straight to conviction. Right. And this is the problem. And I'm glad the MTO person was at least insightful enough to make that determination that we can't just go right to the finish line and start punishing people for bad behavior, because you have to prove that it was bad behavior in a court of law in some way. and they want to just seem to,
that's the whole purpose
point
of these emergencies acts, or the Emergencies Act, the emergency declaration in Ontario, state of emergency in Ottawa itself. The whole point is to usurp powers that they don't generally or genuinely have. Especially as you pointed out, elected officials. These are supposed to be people representing us, not lording over us in the nanny state, which you described there. But an interesting point to that is how government actually works, and how they've been working recently. Like you said, they're not representing us. They've been using polls in order to figure out where they can politically make their moves, like it's a chessboard or something.
Yeah. It is incredible when you think about that, like what you just said. And I absolutely agree with you. But it's phenomenal to think about what you just said, and the fact that every level of government has been looking for holes. They've been looking for loopholes to use against the public. Isn't that incredible when you think about that?
It's devastating.
Like it is. They're looking for ways to make it easier for them to be the ruling class, and to suppress the will of the very people that vote them into those positions. And that's fundamentally appalling and pretty disgusting if you think about it. So, but that is the situation we're in. And then, you have to wonder, well, why is it that, millions of Canadians supported a convoy to deliver a clear message to the government of Canada, which, by the way, they still aren't listening to it.
Well, that's what amazed me the most. So Justin Trudeau, he came out and he had a lot to say about India and their farmers' protests. They ended up going through, I believe it was like at least 12 rounds of negotiations with them before they reached a settlement. Trudeau never came out once, but you can't just blame it all on Trudeau only. Nobody came out.
Agreed.
Nobody came out.
Nobody came out.
I mean, Maxime Bernier came out, but he's not an elected official. He's by all means just a citizen. So
I mean, you did have formerly elected officials, but I will say Randy Hillier was at the time was a sitting member of provincial parliament, and he participated in the convoy in an extremely active role as an independent. But he was still, had that measure of protection because he was an elected official at the time of the convoy. He's not now, but at the time he was. But, in the early days, you saw people like Roman Baber who stood up, but he got kicked out of Ford's caucus immediately. But, there were people, Derek Sloan is another one. He was removed from the federal conservative caucus for a lot of shady stuff that happened in the party, not necessarily anything to do with Derek, but there were politicians out there that were trying to align with the people all throughout this whole pandemic. And credit to Maxime Bernier, right, is that from day one he was out there with Derek and Randy, Roman Baber to a certain degree, and they created the No More Lockdowns caucus. Right. We did have people from the political arena that were fighting on our behalf. And where did that get any of them? Not one of those people are in an elected office right now. Not one.
No, because I think the political elites see them as a liability. Because it's just political theater. They just want to go on what's popular. And I coming from a person who judges everything on a principled position, it turns me off. It really makes my stomach sour, and it's across the board. Like, this is not just one side or the other. Like I said, I'm not a team player. I go on principle. Before we end this, you did bring up digital ID, and if I don't question you on this, the comments are gonna be full of it saying, wait a second, you skipped something. So what did you have to say about digital ID?
So when I was teaching at Georgian College, I did teach 2 full semesters in the artificial intelligence course. They started a brand new 1-year postgrad certificate in AI. And I was teaching a course in machine learning, but the other one I was teaching was something called Issues and Challenges with Artificial Intelligence. And because I got to build the course, I turned it into an ethics course. That's what that whole thing is, the ethics of artificial intelligence. that's future on thinking, right? And that is, this is where we can get ourselves as a species on this planet, where long term we could have AI, interfering and intersecting with every aspect of our life in some really hideous ways. But bring that back to present day. Me and I think a few hundred Canadians had their bank accounts frozen without any due process in this country, without any. And so, and I've told this story many times on different podcasts or interviews where my bank accounts were frozen. My credit card that was on file with my son at his pharmacy to buy his heart medication, because a year ago, like I ate my Christmas dinner last year out of a vending machine at Sick Kids Hospital because my son was in the hospital for 10 days over the holiday, right? And then he ended up needing to go on this different kind of a heart medication that he desperately needed to stay on. My credit card got frozen. And that was the card that was on file to buy his heart medication. Well, guess what? When my credit card was frozen, I couldn't purchase the medicine for my son. Luckily, his mother had cash in the house and she purchased it when the guy came to the door. She purchased it from him, the driver of the pharmacy, because she had cash, right? So when we combine the two things there, we always seem to have this government intention, which is to punish first, and then start attacking your financial assets as a weapon against you. So if we do digital ID, and we wrap this all up into your money, your own financial assets that you earn that are in your account. If you look at the possibility of your driver's license being a digital ID and people in the government wanting to take your license from you, like what this MTO person was saying, you've got the ability to shut off all financial and all means of earning an income just by having a digital ID in this country. Why? Because you someday might disagree with the government. And whether you do that as a large body, as a large group, or you do that as an individual, it doesn't seem to matter, because this entire convoy showed up in Ottawa and they went after everybody. But you do it as an individual, you're just going to have everything turned off and you're not going to have a voice, because digital ID, there's a chance you may not even be allowed on the internet to tell your story.
Yeah.
Because of things like Bill C-11. So if you look at all of this stuff, digital ID is really a symptom of a big giant sickness that we have on the parts of our government. They want to continuously box us in at every turn. They want to control what content we get on the internet with C-11. They want digital ID so that if you have wrong think, that they can basically exclude you from society. If you again, that doesn't work, well, now they want to go after your means of providing for your family, which is a driver's license. If you're a truck driver or a construction worker or a cab driver, you have wrong think, now they're going to go after your license. Maybe that's what the thinking is, right? And nowhere in that did I mention anything about a due process.
No, but you did use a word, wrong think, and that comes from the book 1984 for anyone who's listening. It doesn't.
Yeah, Ministry of Truth.
Yeah, the Ministry of Truth. They had a new type of language where words were bastardized in order to sync up with the political elites and the uniparty. Essentially, it was the one-party government in the story, in the dystopian future novel of that. But yeah, we're seeing this type of thing occurring in China now. And we've all heard the stories. Nobody's happy to live in China. People are happy to emigrate out of China, immigrate into Canada and live here and live free. And we should defend those people. We should be defending those people and their sheer will to come to a country and be free. And in order to do that, we have to protect our own freedoms.
Yeah. Well, one of my students that I had in that AI program was a Chinese student, but he had moved to Canada. One of his jobs in China for a company he worked for was to build an application on smartphones for social credit score. And so when we got to that week's topic about social credit scores and AI in that realm, it was like having a guest speaker come into my class to teach our class, because he had firsthand experience at doing that, right? And one of the intentions of the course that I was teaching, from an ethical point of view was to always instill into my students that, look, you might view this technology you're going to develop in terms of an AI right now, but look at all of the different long-term consequences of what you might develop. And a great example of that is facial recognition software. Okay, that's a great thing if you want to open up your smartphone, until what happens is you've got facial recognition software on your phone that opens it up and you get arrested. And a police officer takes the phone out of your pocket and holds it up to your face and now has access to your phone.
Yeah, right.
Right. We have to look at the second, third, fourth order effects of the technology that we're going to get involved with. And as a citizen, we have to keep an eye on the government and look at the long-term thing, that the way they're boxing us in on all sides. And so digital ID is a huge, huge red flag. We should be avoiding digital ID at all costs. If we do, because there are certain efficiencies there, but the challenge is, how do we protect ourselves from being excluded completely from society without any form of a due process? And if there is a due process where you're excluded from society, typically that means you're incarcerated in a prison, not a prison in your home with no ability to feed yourself, house yourself, get anywhere, get to a doctor, or any of these things. We have to be very diligent in what we're experiencing and recognize that these steps are very incremental. We don't just wake up one day and we're in a dystopia.
No.
These steps incrementally happen. And if they happen so slow that people don't notice, we are going to wake up one day and say, what the hell happened?
Tom, I could talk to you
We gotta be
all
careful.
night about this, but just for brevity, I'm keeping the video short because YouTube likes the videos short. I would love to have you come on for a podcast and do a full deep dive into this one night. Possibly when the inquiry is done and you're a little more rested up, and we can dive into that. Leave a comment in the comment section down below if you want to see that happen. But Tom, thank you so much for joining me today, and tell everyone where they can find you on social media and online.
I'm on all the platforms. It's usually, I just keep it nice and vanilla. It's just Tom Marazzo, or you go to tommarazzo.com. That's the website.
Beautiful. I'll make sure.
And on my YouTube. Yeah.
And on YouTube.
It's all just Tom. Yeah.
All right. I'll make sure I have all the links in the description down below so people can catch up with you there. And thanks again for coming on.
Thank you. Thanks for having me back.
And thank you guys for joining in. And leave a comment in the comment section down below. Check out Tom Marazzo. All the links will be in the description down below. And keep on trucking.